Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome back to another installment of 4E Fridays. This will be the last 4E Friday video for the year 2024, and actually the last video for the year 2024. I'm recording this on December 20th, and we usually are away from Christmas Eve until New Year's Day visiting family. So I won't be uploading videos during that period. I just want to sort of enjoy time with family. But for today's 4E Friday, I wanted to tackle the question of where is the best place to start if you're looking to get into 4th edition now in 2024 or soon to be 2025. And there's a few different options out there, and I just kind of wanted to discuss sort of the pros and cons of each of them, at least as best I can, and sort of give you what my recommendation would be. Now, the first thing that I would recommend is checking out a book. If you're not familiar with 4th edition at all and you have no basis of like comparison or anything, if you're just getting into role-playing games now and you want to try 4e, which is quite a bit different than even like the way that 5th edition is presented, although not as much as people might think. But one thing that might be really useful is to take a look at the player strategy guide. So the player strategy guide gives you all kinds of like guidelines and information that can help you sort of understand like what the character classes are, sort of what they do. Even gives you like multiple choice questions that you can use to like almost like magazine quizzes to determine like what race and class and stuff is best for you. It's just actually kind of neat. It gives you that way to sort of like really, hopefully you're getting the right sort of stuff here. But you get all like this really good introductory information. It gives you like the background of the main campaign setting, the how to choose your powers and things to sort of consider with the different types there and sort of what to look at. I do like the fact that she's holding the actual player's handbook here, but it just gives you all kinds of like really good, useful information that can help you with sort of like the character creation process, because it can be a little overwhelming depending on which version of 4th edition you are starting with. So this can be a really handy guide and something that might be worth considering if you're looking to get into 4th edition. Now, at this point in time, you can get this print on demand from DriveThruRPG or DM's Guild. I always go on the DM's Guild website because it has just specifically D&D stuff. But it is available on DriveThruRPG as well. So this might be a good starting point just to sort of wrap your head around or help your players wrap their heads around some of the 4E concepts. The next thing is which version do you start with? Because there are two kind of starting points. Now, I'm not going to go over like starter sets because I don't have the original 4E starter set. And to get the Essentials red box now is kind of insanely expensive. So I would never recommend that. These two things are available as PDFs on DM's Guild or DriveThruRPG, but they are not currently at this time available print on demand, which is a little weird because for 4th edition you have both the DMGs are available as print on demand, and then I think you have like the Monster Manual 3, but you don't have the Player's Handbook 1, 2, or 3, or like the Monster Manual 1 or 2. It's a weird selection for 4E on DM's Guild, but you can at least get the PDF here. So the first thing, of course, would be the 2008 hardcover. This was the original version of 4th edition that launched. This gives you everything that you need to make your player character. But in 2010, they kind of revised and simplified some aspects of the 4E game, and they released the D&D Essentials line. So these came in like the handy dandy pocket editions, which I'm not going to lie, these products started my obsession with pocket editions. All of my Pathfinder 1st edition books are, with the exception of one which never had a pocket edition, are pocket editions. And I have all of the Pathfinder 2e pocket editions, which is what I use when I'm running games, even though I've got the hardcover. So this year started that whole obsession with me. And this, again, you can get sort of PDF not print on demand, but PDF on DM's Guild. You don't have to print it off yourself, or a lot of people are more comfortable these days just using digital tools than I am. So yeah, the PDF might be all that you really need, but for me, I still need these physical books in hand here. So I want to go over sort of the pros and cons of both of these products, and hopefully that'll help you determine where you should start. And I'll give you my personal recommendation as well. But let's start with, of course, the hardcover Player's Handbook here. So this was the book that started it all, but I will admit it can feel a little overwhelming when you first pick it up and you start flipping through. Like when you realize the class section is nearly 130 pages, compared to like most classes in third edition, for example, maybe being 4 pages long. It's a huge sort of like point of like being almost like this decision paralysis or like an information overload sort of thing. That's where the player strategy guide can come in really handy, because if you fill out those quizzes, it can help you determine which class you might be most interested in personally. But yeah, so what you have here, you do have the full rule set. So you've got the combat rules, character creation, all that, all in the one book, which is definitely a pro. The classes are a little bit more freeform in terms of how they're structured. So here you do get some suggestions based off of like concepts. So you got like the battle cleric for the cleric or the devoted cleric, and they give you like suggested options that you can take for that. But the choice really is yours. You can just look at these different things here and choose whichever abilities that you want. And for some people, that's a really great thing because they love being that hands-on with their character. For some people, it becomes a little overwhelming because it's a lot of choices that you have to make when you're starting off with your character there. So they do give you some suggestions, which is great, but there's still like just an overload of abilities here. And one of the things that 4th edition kind of did was they do sprinkle some artwork throughout, but they did try to keep these books looking like really clean and sort of like more, give it more of like a reference book feel, which is kind of what they're meant to be in the first place. But again, it can feel a little overwhelming, sort of taking a look at all this stuff. But you do get all kinds of classes. So you get the cleric, you get the fighter here as well. So you've got different paragon paths and stuff for the character class as well. You have the paladin, you have the ranger. And then you've got then you have the rogue, which I skipped over their intro page, but you've got the rogue. So you got sort of like some of the traditional ones there. Dagger Master. And then we got the warlock, which is kind of a different take on like the arcane classes. The warlock class was actually introduced in 3rd edition. But it sort of became a bit more popular here where it was in the Player's Handbook and would also be in the 5th edition Player's Handbook. We got the Warlock. Then you've got one of my favorite classes. So you got the Warlord. And this is a class that's all about, like, it's a martial melee character, but it's all about, like, helping to position or grant, like, bonus abilities to your other party members. And I think that's really, really cool. I like this class quite a bit. It became the Battle Master in 5th edition, the fighter archetype. So if you enjoy that class or you enjoy that subclass of fighter, well, in 4th edition, they had a whole class that was dedicated to that. And then you've got the wizard. So you have the cleric, you've got the fighter, you've got the paladin, you've got the ranger, you have the rogue, you have the warlock, warlord, and wizard. So that is 8 classes for you in the Player's Handbook, along with sort of a pretty good assortment of your typical fantasy D&D races there. You got the human, the elf, the gnome. No, you don't have the gnome. Sorry, you have the human, the elf, the dwarf, and the halfling. Then you have the half-elf, the dragonborn, and the tiefling. So you got a pretty good assortment there as well. You do get also your like basic like multi-classing and feats and stuff like that as well. Your skill descriptions are all in here. So again, this is a really decent starting point, but there are a lot of choices that you do sort of have to make here. And if you're just like picking the book up and flipping through it, seeing just page after page after page of abilities can definitely lead to a little bit of decision paralysis. And, if it can be hard sometimes to also maybe build the character that you have as a concept in your head just by choosing like some of the abilities. They may not work the way that you think they do. Or you just might not end up using them. So there's definitely some things with that, but it is a much more hands-on version of the 4th edition game. So if you really love customizing every aspect of your class feature and your class abilities, then this is definitely the way to go. You also have have a larger selection of classes available to you, and you also have, a decent assortment of races available to you. So that's a good option for that. But then we also have the D&D Essentials books. Now, I'm not going to do a full flip through of this one here, but the D&D Essentials line was actually broken down into 2 player books. So you had the Heroes of the Fallen Lands and then Heroes of the Forgotten Kingdoms. So Heroes of the Fallen Lands is kind of like your basic or BX style player's handbook or whatever you want to call it, because it gives you the options for humans, elves, halflings, and dwarves. So you have those 4 races, and then it also gives you cleric, fighter, rogue, and wizard. So this is like your very prototypical fantasy role-playing game player's handbook that covers those bases. The other book, which you could start with as well, because it does duplicate some of the text that's in here, so that if you get Heroes of the Forgotten Kingdoms first, or instead of Heroes of the Fallen Lands, you're not out any information. But this is the one that came out first. This is the one that I would recommend starting with. But what's interesting about this one, again, so you got 4 races available to you. The Tiefling and the Dragonborn are available in the other book, along with the Drow. And I think they have the human in there again as well, because again, that could have been your first, so they didn't want to make it so that there weren't any humans in your game if you bought the second book and not the first one. But this does give you, again, a really good breakdown of information that beginners would be really, good to have at their fingertips. It incorporates a little bit of like the player strategy kind of concepts in there, I guess, but it makes it, breaks it down really, really well. It goes over the roles, it goes over the races, the abilities, and selecting your class features and all that stuff. And then we get into the classes themselves. And where the classes, what they do here, once I get to it, gives you quite a bit of stuff. Okay, so here we got the cleric. So here we have the war priest. So with the 4th edition card cover player's handbook, they gave you some suggestions if you wanted to create sort of a themed character. But here, the abilities are all based off of the theme that they present. So everything is geared towards playing this war priest here. So if you want to be like this war priest character, then this is going to be fully tailored to that experience. You do still get choices whenever you gain levels with sort of features. You typically will get options or choices there. Not in all the cases, but for the most part, especially at lower levels when you're choosing like your at-will and encounter powers, those are typically, they'll give you a handful of options that you get to choose 1 or 2 of. And again, it gives you all the information that you need there to make that character class the way that you want to, along with the different domains to customize your character a little bit more. Then we've got the fighter, which has the knight and the slayer. So with the fighter class, they give you 2 possible builds. So if you want it to be more of a focus on heavy armor and like sword and shield and defensive capabilities, then you can play the knight. If you want to be more charging in the battle and swinging a big 2-handed weapon around, then you could be the slayer. You are capable of picking and choosing where there's multiple class builds. You can choose between the 2 class options. So if you wanted to play this heroic knight, but there is an ability that you find in the Slayer section that you'd want to have for your character, you can still do that. But it is recommended that you kind of stick to the one build they have here. But again, all of that is done for you, which I think is really handy because it takes away some of that like potential, decision paralysis stuff that can happen with the player's handbook. But the downside is that you have fewer races and fewer classes available to you if you go this route. But if you do go this route, then you have a much more clearly defined set of character classes that could be really useful, again, if you're getting beginners into the game. So, of the 2, which would I recommend more for beginners getting into 4th edition for the first time? I think I'd have to give the edge to the D&D Essentials line. Number 1, it's a little bit cheaper. They are soft cover. I don't think they've gone up in price quite as much as the hardcover books have as the years have gone on. Again, you can get these as PDFs as well, so if that's all that you're interested in, then that's perfectly fine. But it is structured for beginners, and I think that is are really important if you're trying to get somebody into something, because if you're overwhelmed or if your players feel overwhelmed by the amount of decisions that they'll have to make, then maybe you want to offer them a bit more of a streamlined experience. Now that said, once you've gotten comfortable with this, I do think it is worth graduating to the hardcover books. These hardcovers always stayed sort of available to use, like Essentials books when they started releasing like the hardcover books afterwards, like Heroes of Shadow and Heroes of the Feywild and all that stuff. They were compatible with the hardcover books as well. So you can always sort of mix and match within there as well if you wish to. But I think that the Essentials line is a really good starting point for beginners. And I mean like beginners to ease them into RPGs. But I think it is definitely worth, once they get comfortable, to introduce the actual hardcover player's handbook and give them the option to really sort of dive in and customize and create the character class that they want, right, with the abilities that are available to them. And also, like I said, the player strategy guide is not a bad pickup either if you're looking to help beginners sort of decide what might be the best class or race combination for them based off of how they answer those like questionnaires in the book. So really, really cool stuff. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. If you were to introduce somebody to 4th edition in 2024 or 2025, where would you start? Would you start with the Essentials to make them a little bit easier, a bit of a smoother transition for them into the game? Or would you get the hardcover player's handbook and let them really sort of dive in and tweak things the way that they want to? So let me know that in the comments below. Anyway, thank you all so very much for watching. I truly appreciate it. The response to this series has been really something that I was not fully expecting. And like I said, I will be taking a bit of a break if you're watching this in late December 2024. This video is going out on the 20th. And it'll be the last video of the year until we get into January 2025. So I just want to thank everybody for that. Hope everybody has a great, happy, and safe holiday season. And we will see you in 2025, or we're already in 2025 if you're watching this down the road. But regardless, until next time, take care.